start to put tension on my string drawback, I was like, okay, I'm gonna smoke.
It's him. You can look at the horns when he's dead. I'm in the zone. Let the arrow go is perfect.
When they lose their front shoulders, that's how you know they're smoking.
Went about 5, 10 more yards. We probably went 20 yards to a little tip, then we would try to get back up. And I saw him pull up.
We rushed 40 years rods that night. We got like 156 and something like that, and then the next day we came up to 163 even.
You're listening to the White Cat Outdoors podcast, bringing you to the table where we talk about the outdoors.
Hello. Hi. What's up? Hello. How's everybody doing? Episode 131.
You idiot.
God damn it. 132.
We even discussed it before.
Yeah. I was into it.
Half a meatball.
Yeah, it was bad. 132. What's up? Nick and Tom are here.
What's up?
How you doing?
And we've been kind of
it's the slow time.
Yeah, it is. Like, you guys need to write in the comments more and let us know what you want to hear about, so we don't have to think so hard. Not to point any fingers, but I'm pointing my finger.
Yeah,
Get on it.
We've got a couple guests we're trying to get into the works. Just haven't hit those dates yet, so we got some filler episodes we got to put in there. So, give us some ideas of what you guys want to hear. We got another snake hunt coming up here in a couple weeks, so we'll hopefully have some more snake talk. But before we know it, it's going to be freaking deer season.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to get wild.
That's fact. I'm excited for that.
Is this going to be our third installment of the Deer Camp series this
year? It will
be.
Yep.
2 years in a row, we've been able to go every week from October to December with a kill episode. So
we're going to keep it going. Be even better this year.
Volume 3, third installment.
Maybe you'll get a buck we can talk about.
We got one the first year.
It was the very last. We actually had to bring it back.
Yeah, because
we ended the Deer Camp series and then brought you back for a bonus.
So what
Deer
about
Camp.
it, Tom?
I don't think it counts unless it's within the confines of.
It was called Deer Camp series, so.
But like a bonus feature.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think it counts.
Debatable.
Anyway.
Leave it in the comments.
Yeah. Along with your episode idea. But
so,
yep.
Tom, what are we talking about tonight?
So, as Nick mentioned, we are getting really close to deer season, and it's getting to be that time of year where people start hanging up their tree stands, getting them prepped for the upcoming season. So we thought maybe we should talk about how we pick our favorite stand locations and why we put our stands where we do.
I'm all about that.
Great topic, Tom. Something that everybody that deer hunts probably has to do.
And I think the biggest mistake people make with their pre-hung sets is they wait until right at season or during season. Not that it is going to hurt you that much, but if you go in there traipsing around cutting limbs and doing stuff during season, you're going to hurt that spot for a day or two before they're
you cut a shooting lane, the deer are going to know, okay, why is this different?
Yeah.
This didn't look like this when I walked here yesterday.
Yeah, so you definitely want to get it done earlier, sooner rather than later, so they can acclimate to, 1, the stand being there, 2, the new cut that you make. And
I actually know a guy that when he trims shooting lanes, he puts mud over where he cuts
so
limbs.
It's not a bright.
So it doesn't. Yeah, it's not like a huge color change to show like fresh human infringement, if you will.
Yeah, but I mean, even at that, the deer are going to notice if a limb is gone.
Yeah,
it's like if they know what something looks like in the woods where they walk.
It's like if somebody took the salt and pepper shaker off your kitchen table.
Yeah.
You'd notice it was missing.
Yeah, exactly. It's very minuscule, but you're going to be like, where is this? It was literally just here, and they're the same way. They know what stuff looks like when they walk through the woods, and if it changes, it's going to draw their attention.
Yeah.
Which you don't want.
For sure don't want that.
Thanks for that tip, Tom. That's the hot tip of the week. But that plays right into stand location is putting it in a place that looks as natural as possible.
You can do as minimal cutting as possible.
Yeah. And hanging it somewhere where you're concealed as much as possible while still being able to get a shot off.
Yeah.
So Tommy, why don't we let's start with a food plot stand location. Start with that.
Like food plot or field.
Yeah, I feel like you're going to be pretty similar.
Well, no. Let's do food plot first because typically food plots in general are a lot smaller than like cutting a whole field edge.
So setting up for a food plot, the biggest thing that I think you have to take into
Consideration.
I don't know where counter
Just literally
Account and consider, maybe? I don't know.
probably. Take into consideration is the predominant wind direction.
Mm-hmm.
So where we're at, we mostly have a west wind. And sometimes
there's
you
a
get
western component.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it'll
pretty
go
much all
from
the time.
southwest to northwest, or straight out of the west. So you want to set your stand in a position where, with that west wind, you'll still be able to access it, with your face into the wind the whole time you're walking in, and your scent is not blowing to where the deer are coming from or where they're going to be. So you don't want
It gets
your
a little
scent.
tricky.
It does get tricky. You don't want your scent blowing out into the middle of the food plot on a western wind, because any deer that comes out into that food plot is going to smell you.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, you don't want it. Oh, this is tough to describe because you kind of have to see the food plot to see what's going around. But for the most part, you don't want your scent blown out into the food plot. You don't want your scent blown into bedding or where you think the deer are going to come from.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to make an access trail where you can get in quietly, not bump anything out. You're not disturbing any bedding, anything like that.
I think a couple weeks ago we talked to Mike Perry, and one of the things he talked about was a crosswind, which I think has a lot of weight for this topic as well, because there's no way. I mean, maybe there might be a few, fantasy farms out there that are just absolutely perfect, but it's almost impossible to have a stand locate like a food plot location that you
Has
can,
a perfect wind.
Yeah, well, yeah, that you can walk in there with your face to the wind, that you didn't walk through their bedding, that you aren't walking where they're going to come from, that you can get up into the tree and it's not blowing over the food plot. Like, it's very tough for all three of those things to all work in unison every single time. And then throw in thermals and it just gets even more complicated. So I think personally, your biggest is once you get to your stand, you don't want your scent blowing to where they're coming from or where you're shooting.
And I think
And
another really big thing is you don't want your scent blowing into the bedding on your way in.
No.
Because
I agree.
if you're walking in and your scent's blown into the bedding, well, you're telling every single deer, "Hey guys, I'm on my way."
Yeah. I don't really care where my scent's going walking in, as long as it's not towards where I believe that they're at. Because once I'm there, it doesn't matter behind me. My main goal when I'm walking to where I'm going is not leaving ground scent where they're probably going to be coming from. I pay attention more to that than I do wind walking in. Like I said, it's in the back of my mind. Like, I know where the deer are probably going to be at, where they're bedded. So I don't want my wind blowing that direction, but I'm more concerned with my ground scent. I don't want a deer crossing my trail when they're coming in, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So if you're lucky enough to find a tree where all of those stars align just perfectly, which I would say 90% of the time is not the case, you just try and get as many factors in your favor as possible. But I don't know how you guys, or the listeners, like to do it, but we don't really put our tree stands right on the very edge of the food plot. We like to have them back, 10, 15 yards. I think you just get more cover that way, because being that you're hunting such an open area, if you're right on the edge of the food plot, it's going to be easy to get busted, easy to get skylined. There's just not great cover, so we try and pick a tree where you have decent cover, as good as you can for hunting an open area.
Little tip while we're talking about, with cover and everything. Something that we do that I don't know if, I'm sure there's other people that do it, but we like to leave small trees or brush circles and stuff within the food plot that gives you opportunities to draw on deer that are moving through your food plot.
And we like to keep those trees or brush like inside 25 yards.
Yeah.
That way, when they walk behind it,
They're
now
out
you
of-
draw,
Yeah.
and as soon as they step out, you know they're at 25 yards.
Yeah, I just it kind of just came to me like when you were talking about having cover further back. So something we like to do is just leaving
Make
small
your own
trees or
cover.
shrubs. Yeah, something that if you set up your food plot correctly, in a almost like a bean shape, where they're more likely to migrate through it to see what's in the whole field. Chances are they're going to step behind one of those brush piles or something, and at some point you can draw back there, and you're at full draw waiting for them to step out the other side. So just a little tidbit thing that we like to do.
So kind of off of food plots are very difficult, I guess, because there's so many factors that go into it. So it's tough to describe
A
a
specific.
specific without
there's
seeing
no perfect
yeah
setup.
without actually seeing the food plot. So it's kind of difficult to do a broad term or a broad explanation on this is how you set up on a food plot. Fields are a little bit easier. Two things I really like in fields or three things actually. If there's a hedgerow that goes through the field, I like the low point of the field and I like the high point of the field. If there's a crest, a lot of the times the deer, they'll come out on that crest so they can see what's above or what's below them on either side of the crest. They can see the entire field. And I also like the low point because scent gathers in the low points. So deer,
That's due to thermals
Yeah.
when you have a very calm day.
yeah. So when deer come out, if they're not coming out on the high point, a lot of times they like to come out on the low point so they can smell what's out in the field. So what I like to do is if I'm setting up, we'll start with a high point of the field. If there's a crest on the field, you go where that crest meets the wood line, and a lot of the times you'll find, deer trails coming out of the woods right along that knoll. So I don't like to set up right on the deer trail. I don't like a 5-yard shot. I like my shots 20 to 25 yards is ideal for me. So I'll set up, 20, 25 yards off of that trail and set it up so I can see the deer coming through the woods. And by the time they step out into the field, I know I have a perfect broadside shot, 20 yards, 25 yards. Nothing's going to be in my way.
I feel like one thing I've noticed with field hunting is that deer, I'm sure they're as perceptive to it, but I feel like they don't care as much with like what we talked about with pruning lanes and stuff. I've cut quite a bit of stuff off of field edges so I could see to shoot, and it doesn't grab their attention quite as much for whatever reason I have noticed. I don't know why, but if you do that same amount of cutting in the woods, they're going to pay a lot more attention to it as opposed to on a field edge.
And I think that's because fields are constantly changing throughout the year. They go from super high in the springtime, and then a farmer will come and he'll mow the whole field.
Yeah.
Then they rototill it, plant it, and
So I have a little bit of a different opinion than you when it comes to field hunting. Most of it lines up, except for the low point of the field. I agree that the deer like to come out there on low points, but I will not sit in the low point unless I've got a lot of wind. And because of what you said with scent, I don't really care to. If my scent I know is going to pull down there, I don't want to tip that deer off. And that's just something I've noticed on low points in one specific field up at our far camp off the old main road. I've been busted a couple times out of that ladder on calm evenings, and they came out of that old trail, and I know that they smelled me because it was like they would bust before they even got to the field edge. So that's just something I've experienced. So I don't like to hunt the low points of a field unless I have a steady wind.
which makes sense. Yeah, I'm just saying it.
No,
As far as deer movement goes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, one thing, I mean, with deer hunting, and we all know that, like, there's no concrete answer for anything. So, I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many factors that come into, so yeah, like, obviously deer like to come out at the low points, they like the high points, but there's different reasons for both. And that's why it becomes a chess match. You got to figure out, you know, if there's a certain buck you're wanting to kill, how does he like to come out to the field? But if you're just trying to go after a deer or a buck, you know, and not all fields have that crest high point in it. Sometimes
Yeah, a
it's
lot
a
of them.
gradual climb up, so you only have a low point to hunt. You know, not very few, but there's a lot of fields that only have one or the other.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm not saying like this is, if you're going to set up on a field, this is how you have to do it at the high point or the low point. A lot of times there'll be
There's scrapes all over fields.
Sometimes there'll be a deer highway coming out, you know, halfway to the knoll in between the high point and the low point. And if there's a monster trail coming out, I'll hang a stand there too. I'm not saying this is the only way to do it, but
well, and that's one of the benefits of having like a mobile setup too, is being able to
Check
see
those
that stuff
stuff,
on.
yeah.
It's hunting on the fly. It's just you know the general idea of what typically happens on that field edge. But if you're heading out there, you know, end of October, and all of a sudden there's this huge scrape on the side of the field, you know, that looks like it could be used during the daytime. Yeah, it's probably worth setting up on. That was what Tom and I did last year to kill his buck. You know, I've heard a lot of people say that, you know, field edge scrapes are nighttime activity, but not always. If it's
I've had a lot of activity on field edge scrapes during shooting
I think
hours.
if it's in close proximity to where they're bedding, I think it makes no difference that it's on the edge of the field.
Yeah.
I think pressure has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I think it's more pressure than it does
So
how they use them.
yeah, where Tom and I shot this, or where Tom shot the buck, I shot him on camera. We don't hunt back there hardly at all.
and haven't in years.
Yeah, so very low pressure. It's on the edge of a field. You know, if a lot of people say, "Oh, it's it's a nighttime scrape. Don't spend all day sitting there." We sat on it one day and killed that 9 point. So, I think like they said, there's so many different factors. If you've got a low pressure area, field edge scrapes I think can be great.
I agree.
Late October. So
And then real quick before we dive into the wood setups, like I mentioned, hedgerows, deer are what's the word I'm looking for?
fringe,
Edge creatures.
edge creatures, fringe creatures. Yeah, I know
Yeah.
what you're going for.
They like that
Transitional
transition type like stuff like that. So if there's a hedgerow running through the field, a lot of times they will travel that hedgerow. So it's just not a bad spot. I've had a lot of good spots
It's
on the
actually
hedgerow.
a good transition into woods hunting too, because if you hunt properties that are even old timber, like mature blocks of timber, if you can find old hedgerows, it's all timber now, but you
Yeah.
find like that hard line of maples where it goes from like
maple to
hard-
hemlock.
Yeah, there's like this, but I mean, there's the one property we have that it's like oaks everywhere, and then there's like a hard line of oaks, and then it turns into like all these like poplars and just other junk trees, and the deer run that thing like crazy. So like it was probably a field edge 200
one
years
point,
ago or
yeah.
whatever. I don't know. I'm just throwing a number out there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like what Tom said is fringe, transition, however you want to call it. Whenever there's a change in
Yeah, no matter what the
habitat,
change
it
is.
seems like deer will utilize that for travel. So I guess now we can dive right into the woods.
Yep. Well, I've been doing some talking. I'll let you jump on this one.
All right, so I like to typically hunt into the woods more than Tom does. I do early season. I stay towards the perimeter of our property, and most of the property is timber right from the edge. So for me, I like to find intersecting trails and water. Like if there's a stream, I like to be able to hunt close to the water because I can use it as access. That's just something especially the one property we have out my dad's farm. There's a stream that runs right through it. I like to be able to jump down and use that to get where I like to be. It keeps it, a little less
Invasive walking
invasive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, any way you can access your stands with as little intrusion as possible
Now,
is better.
The one thing Mike said a couple weeks ago that it's going to have me checking out a new area is what he's talking about, those turns in the creek where it has like the rocks washed up.
Yeah.
There's a certain spot that I'm picturing, and I'm sure Tom knows exactly what I'm talking about on that stream edge.
Hunted it.
I've hunted that bowl before, but I've never specifically sat right there, and I've got video of deer crossing right there. I never put. I guess I wasn't as observant as I should have been. I didn't. Like Mike pointed out, that they crossed there, and I've videotaped deer crossing in that spot, but I never put the connection together that it is because it's shallower there. It just makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing for me is intersecting trails. For me, one trail is not enough. I like to find a spot where two come together or intersect. What do you, Frank?
I look less for trails because I do more woods hunting than field hunting as well, but I look less for trails, and I'm more of those transition spots. Like the one area that I've hunted a lot over the years, I haven't really the past couple of years, there's a hard line of hemlocks, and it's a thin line kind of just in from a field that goes down to a swamp, and then it comes up, makes like a 90-degree turn, and on either side of this row of hemlocks, you have hardwoods or brush. There's something going on either side of it that's different, and that L shape of hemlocks is just a highway all the time. So it just gives them a nice, easy spot to travel between two areas. They're right on that transition. They have options to go either way from that. And anytime I can get into hemlocks, I'm all about it. Because like we talked about, setting your stands up where you have plenty of cover, you're not going to get better cover than a hemlock.
I love hunting out of hemlock trees.
They're by far my favorite tree.
I will hunt, so if I'm in an area, I get to the general vicinity of where I want to hunt, and there's there's two trees I'm picking from, and one might be a little bit better than the other. If one's a hemlock, I'm going that route.
Yeah.
As long as the wind and everything is okay, I would much rather have the cover of a hemlock than pick the beech tree that doesn't have the cover.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can disappear into a hemlock so quickly, and you can most of the time just climb the branches. So it saves a lot of time.
Yeah, exactly. And you can usually cut even though you have a lot of cover in a hemlock, it usually doesn't take a whole lot of cutting to get a shooting lane out of a hemlock.
Usually one or two limbs.
Yeah, so you're not drawing attention by cutting half a freaking tree out.
Another thing, while we're talking about trimming hemlocks, that I always do when I hunt hemlocks is I don't cut the branch completely. I cut it until it falls out of my line, or the area where I want to shoot. So it's not like this giant opening. It's basically like what I'll take.
Yeah,
I cut it, just over halfway and let the weight of it
sag.
Because if you're cutting with a handsaw, I'm talking if you're trimming as you hang your stand.
Yeah.
You can watch as you're cutting, the branch will start to lower before it actually breaks away.
Yeah.
So I'll cut it until it falls just out of where I need it to be. And that has worked really well for me, just to open it up and it keeps it still in the tree.
Yeah, and you still have cover with that.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of times if you cut out the whole branch, you have your shooting lane, but now your legs are exposed. So this way you can kind of just let it sag just enough.
Yeah.
And actually it'll keep the limb alive too if you ever go back to it. It's kind of like a hinge cut halfway up the tree.
Yeah.
Tom, I know you do some woods hunting, especially when it comes to November, if you still got a tag.
Yeah, most of the time I don't. But so early archery season, if I'm not hunting a field, if I know, okay, there's a buck in the area, but he's not coming out to the field until after dark, I'll try and hunt that transition area in between the bedding and the field.
Usually there's a trail that runs parallel with the field, 40 yards in.
Yeah, they'll check that, they'll scent check it on the downwind side of the field. They'll run the edge parallel so they can smell anything that's out in the field. So I don't necessarily hunt that trail because they probably do that right before they come out. But I know up at our farm up there in New York, one of the primary bedding areas is this big beaver swamp. And it's probably 150, 200 yards from the main field.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'll find, like Nick said, some intersecting trails that are coming from the bedding area out to the field.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're getting out into the field, 20 minutes after dark, well, they're probably out of their bed an hour before dark, and I'm hoping to catch them.
Yeah.
When
on their
they
way
browse the whole way there, so it takes a long time.
Yeah, they don't just get up and run right over there.
Yeah, it takes some time for them to get out there. So I'll, like Nick said, intersecting trails where, there's trail coming out of the bedding here, trail coming out of the bedding here, trail coming out over there, and they all kind of meet up right over here.
So
That's what I think is kind of difficult with certain transition areas, like that place I was describing. The deer will use that whole area, so it's tough to find like one specific trail. So
you just hunt different property than me and Tom. We don't
Mm-hmm.
have, most of the places we hunt have a hard trail.
yeah,
Like not hard trail.
and there
but like,
are still I still have those hard trails to hunt, and I will hunt them if that's what I have. But like areas like that where they have options, they don't. It's not like they're pushed to kind of one area, like a bottleneck. It's not bottlenecked. It's a 50-yard wide swath of hemlocks that they can walk through. They're not going to walk.
They just kind of go aimlessly through it.
Yeah, they're just kind of bouncing back and forth, and they're coming from the brush over here in this spot. They're coming from the hardwood at this spot. So there's never a specific spot where it's like, okay, this is the hard trail where most of the deer are running through right here. You just kind of got to pick and choose your access points and pay attention to stuff out away from that a little bit, but that they will be in this spot right here. So you just kind of got to look at everything else around you to find that specific spot.
So, Tom, when you're talking getting on these trails that are like from the bedding out to the field, how close are you comfortable with being to where you believe like the bedding area is? And I'm sure it changes for a preset stand and one that you're going to hang to hunt that night.
If it's one that's already up, I don't mind getting within 50 yards of that bedding. If I'm going in to hang it, I'm more like 75, 100 yards.
You're right on the money with where I was at with it. I've heard that, and I've killed deer off of bedding, like not like out of their bed or anything like that, but it seems like a deer, when it gets up, it'll cover 100, 150 yards, around that bedding, like a radius, still in daylight. So I don't think it's necessary to try and get in a tree that's 25 yards from where it's trying to bed. I mean, I'm pretty quiet getting set up, but there is nothing you can do to stop that sound of your stick sliding down the tree as it
Yeah, as you
goes
lock
tight.
it in.
Yeah, there's just nothing you can do about it. And I know that like in the woods, you can hear everything on a calm day.
Yeah.
And there's no way that inside 50 yards, that stick sliding down the tree, they don't hear that. Even if they don't associate that with a hunter, it tips them off to look that direction.
Yeah,
And inside 50 yards, I can almost guarantee you they'll see you climbing up that tree.
yeah.
So I'm with Tom, 75 to 100 yards with a stand I'm hanging. But like you said, if you have a stand that's already preset, 50 yards I'm okay with because I can get up it quietly. The tree, hopefully the way I set it up, I'm pretty much using the tree between where I believe he's at,
Yeah.
climbing up that side and getting into the stand without ever really exposing myself to that side.
Yeah, and you always make sure you can get in quietly so you're not tipping them off with you just walking.
Yeah.
And then you're in real quiet and he is none the wiser.
Yeah. Well, and that we have a stand that's set up like that up there, and what we can do is just cut in from the corner of the field. If your goal is to kill them before they get out to the field, who cares if you walk through the field to get there?
Yeah.
I mean, if it's a doe, I don't really care if she smells me once she's past me. If I'm after a buck, I'm supposed to be shooting it before it even gets to where I walked in. So I don't mind using the field to access it super quiet versus coming all the way through the timber.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
this year we're going to have trails through the property, so that's going to help access so much.
Yeah.
Because right now, I mean, you do your best to be quiet, but walking on leaves when it hasn't rained in a month,
They make a little noise.
yeah, we're not Indians. It's tough. So I think with the trails, it's going to really help us access stands a lot quieter. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited for that.
My dad and I were talking about that the other day. We were putting some cameras up, and we're like looking like, how are we going to get into? It's that clear cut. We're like, how are we going to access this? We were just kicking around different ideas as we were putting up cameras, and there is one logging road that like goes up through the majority of the property that we'll be able to use to get farther back in, but it's going to be.
Now, do you think that they're in there like early morning, or do you think you can get into there while they're still out in the field?
See, that was something that we talked about. There's one spot on the back side of the property where there's a bunch of hemlocks where we put a couple cameras up, and he's like, I think this would be a great morning spot. It's far back there. It's all the way on the back of the property, but you can basically walk that logging road all the way up to it. Mm-hmm. So even though if there are deer already in there in the morning, you can kind of get through it quietly.
Yeah.
But you're also, what the hope is with that spot is you're going all the way back onto the edge of the clear cut near the transition areas, and you're going to be catching them coming back in to the clear cut from wherever they, there's ag fields all over the place. So the idea with that one is to catch them coming back in.
So for me, that I've hunted, not obviously that area, but I've hunted several spots where I have to walk by where deer may be already, and that's why I quit using a headlamp coming in. If I can. There's certain times, you might need to flick it on when you get to the spot.
Yeah.
But I used to, I mean, when I was younger, maybe had a little bit of fear of the dark, being in the woods, get eaten by a bear or something. But I always had my headlamp on from the time I got out of the truck till I got set up in the tree. And now I don't turn my headlamp on unless I absolutely have to. Most of the
I'm
time,
the same way.
I can usually get to the tree that I think I want to be in because I usually know the property pretty well.
Especially if it's a pre-hung stand.
For a pre-hung, I won't turn my light on at all.
Yeah.
But I'm saying if I'm taking my mobile stand in, I might need to turn it on just to make sure that, this is
Yeah,
red.
I use red light.
Yeah, that's another thing. When I do turn on a light, it's red. But walking by where you believe deer may be, like in that clear cut, if you walk that trail and it's pitch black, coyotes,
it could be anything
raccoons,
walking by.
Everything walks through the woods in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to get tipped off that was a human coming through there.
No.
Now, if you've got a big beaming light on the top of your head, now
they're going to have some questions.
Yeah. So I think that's important too. Is lose the headlamps, lose the flashlights while you're accessing your stand. Especially like you said, if you know where the stand is,
you don't need the light.
There's no reason to have a light.
Yeah. You should be familiar enough with the property and where you hung the stand that you should be able to get there.
A lick of preparation on the property you're hunting with a preset and everything, you should be able to get to your stand without a light.
Yeah, no doubt.
If you can't, I would practice before the season because I think it's huge.
It is.
Not do that.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. And like we've talked about how you climb your stand. Like with your mobile setup, you go up and down trees all the time in the summertime just to really figure out how you want to do stuff. And
Wednesday I was climbing.
Yeah. So even if it's not a preset stand that you're working on getting into, knowing exactly where you're going so you don't have to turn that light on, work with your mobile setup in the summertime so you know exactly how to do it the quickest and quietest.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hunting like this for a long time. It started with climbers. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I switched to a lock-on with sticks. But I still like to tweak with it or play with it just to get it so I can be as quiet as possible. Like I said, there's nothing you can do about that stick sliding down the tree.
Yeah.
I've since switched to sticks that don't slide nearly as much. Like certain sticks bite faster than others, I believe. So I've got that advantage. But I think being efficient with your ascend, even if it is a preset, like if you're not used to using screw-ins, like your climbing sticks, whatever you're using, like I just think it's important to be efficient.
Yeah, no doubt.
Anything else, Tommy?
Well, I was just going to say a couple things about setting up rut stands. Because once rut kicks on, I kind of drop the whole, what am I looking for, permanent stand. and go mostly mobile.
Mm-hmm.
Just because,
Got to be where the deer are.
yeah, you got to be where the deer are, and you could be hunting one spot and not see a damn thing all day long, and your buddy 300 yards away from you has had bucks cruising by him all day.
We have that conversation constantly at camp when Tom and I are up there for a week straight. One night I'm on fire. Tom's like, yeah, I didn't see shit. Next day I go out, I'm like, I might go back to the same exact spot and be like, I didn't see shit. And Tom's like, dude, bucks were grunting, fighting crazy over here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stuff changes fast in the rut, so you got to be adaptable.
Yeah, that's why I like to go mobile during the rut. Some things I like to hunt during the rut are if I find fresh scrape.
Mm-hmm.
Fresh scrape, you got to set up on it. I don't care if you have the spot picked out. You're like, all right, this is where I'm going. If you're walking in and you see a scrape that you can see has piss in it and freshly kicked up dirt, I'm
probably going to want to
there.
hunt
If it
it.
stinks,
Yeah.
still,
Yeah, I'm scrapping. I don't care if I thought, oh man, I can't wait to get to this spot. I haven't hunted it yet all year. I'm super jacked. If I get halfway there and there's a brand new scrape,
Yeah.
that's where I'm going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Downwind of bedding areas, love that. Can't get enough of it. Bucks, they'll cruise that downwind side of bedding, scent checking it for does. So basically anywhere 40, 50 yards off that bedding is typically where they'll cruise to scent check it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just back off of that 25 yards, which puts you at 75, 80 yards, perfect distance, it should be a fun hunt. And
bottlenecks, that's my favorite.
I was going to say pinch points, which is same thing.
Same thing.
So if that's your favorite, Nick.
Yeah, so when it comes to the rut, I'm also with Tom. If I have a spot picked out and I walk across red hot sign, I'm setting up.
Yeah.
You know, I think you're crazy to walk over hot sign to go somewhere that might have hot sign.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you walk across something that's hot, sit there and hunt it. But typically I'm looking for bottlenecks, and it's more than just a pinch point in transition or something. I like to have at least one side of the pinch point be inaccessible to the deer, whether it be a large body of water, a super steep ravine, which isn't inaccessible to deer, but if they have the opportunity,
They're lazy, though.
yeah, they'll work around it if they can. Like, they'll
Yeah.
walk the ridge top instead of, at least that's what I've experienced. They typically aren't going to.
They're not going to walk straight up and down a really steep hill if they can walk at the
consistently.
top.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be inaccessible to deer. You could actually use open field as
Well, it's kind of inaccessible if you think about how you want to
Because
describe that. They don't want to be out in the wide open.
yeah. I'm just saying a deer has the capability of walking across that open field, but they don't want to because
They're exposing themselves.
so they'd rather hang tight into the cover. And that's actually how I killed my buck in archery season. It's a basically
New York buck.
a pinch point's created with the slope of this hill, and it kind of comes down into this big open meadow, and he came right down the hill, cut in between the
You had a large field and a small meadow that pinched the woods down to a pretty small width of timber.
yeah, and there's a permanent stand hung there, but it's hung there for a reason.
Yeah, I think pinch points, bottlenecks, whatever you want to call it, I think hourglasses, whatever, I think are great spots for permanent sets for rut.
Yeah.
I usually won't bother those stands until the rut, but a big one for me is bodies of water. I know I've seen plenty of pictures and videos of deer wading across water. Haven't seen it myself. I hunt on several big ponds, and I've never seen a deer just up and swim through the middle of it. They always worked around the edge. So I like to use water as something that's inaccessible. It forces them, if you've got, a big block of timber and there's a huge pond on one side that forces the deer to come around it, be at the corner of that pond.
Yeah.
Because anything that's over here or over here that's working through there is going to work around the corner. And that's I get a ton of action during the rut if I get in there at the right time and there's a hot doe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my main thing for rut. Obviously, if there's hot sign, but the big thing is finding bottlenecks.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever had good luck hunting rub lines?
No.
Eh.
I was gonna say I've set up on a lot of rub lines, and I've just
It feels good.
it sure
I
does.
feel like every time I've had success hunting, like I find a rub line and I've had success, or like see deer, not even kill anything, but just have a lot of activity. I feel like it's less because of the fact that there's a rub line there and whatever scent is associated with that. And I feel like it's more if it's in like a bottleneck area, because I'll find a rub line that goes for a couple 100 yards, say. I won't just set up in a random spot. I'll find a pinch point or
You need something more.
Yeah, I'm
You want
not
some-
just
okay.
looking for that one. Like,
So
oh,
that's
okay, I see a bunch of rubs going through the woods here. Like,
I feel
okay,
like-
but what is going to focus them?
I feel like that's a good point that we're subconsciously applying to all of those is you need two. Like,
Yeah, you're not
the
looking
pinch
for
point-
one sign.
Yeah, pinch point isn't enough. You need pinch point and doe bedding, or pinch point and or a scrape and bedding, or
Yeah,
rub plus trails or something. You almost need two factors when you're
Yeah.
setting up like an ideal rut.
yeah,
spot.
no doubt. I definitely, and like you said, I was definitely subconsciously thinking that. I'm not just looking for one thing, but yeah, it's definitely multiple facets need to go into picking that spot on a spot.
I think one of my favorite things when I'm getting ready to go in for a rut hunt is I'm walking in, I can smell.
Yeah.
When you can smell the hot doe,
Oh, yeah.
that just fires me up. I'm like, oh man, we're in it.
Yeah. It's going to be a good night.
Like,
You know what I like to do as soon as I get up in the stand?
Pee?
No, I just let out a bunch of grunts and some rattling.
Just get wild with it.
I mean, you make some commotion going into the woods. You're not dead silent.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, I'm like, I just made a little bit of noise.
Might as well paint the rest of the picture.
Yeah, now it sounds like there's a buck walking through here, and he found another buck, and now they're scrapping it out.
Maybe.
I mean,
I'm always a lot quieter than you are, though.
Oh, yeah.
me and Frank both. Frank and I both go for the surprise approach. The only time I ever grunt is when I see the buck and I don't believe I'm going to get a shot without trying something.
Yeah.
I grunted that buck, my New York buck, right in.
No, I'm not saying it doesn't work for everybody.
And I grunted
but
every 15 minutes before that.
yeah, so it was definitely the grunt they called.
Well, I don't know if the grunt called him in,
but you
when
watched
he,
him respond to it. So.
well, yeah, I don't think he came in to my previous grunts, but when he did, when I got a visual of him, he was not coming my way, and I grunted at him, and
Turned
his
him
ears
around.
came back, hair on his neck stood up, and he came in on a laser beam,
Sucked me right in.
right to 7 yards.
Yeah, I had the buck that I was drawn back on last year. I grunted him in, but I saw him. He was probably 150 yards away working a scrape, and I knew that there's a stand over there too. And I knew that there was another trail over there, and if he took that one, I was never going to see that deer again.
Yeah.
Because he was already standing in about 3 inches of water where he was at. So I knew that he was going to cut back into the woods out of my life. So I grunted at him while he was making this scrape, and immediately came heading my way. Now it took him like a half hour to actually come into bow range, and it all fell apart as fast as it came together. I think I've told this on the podcast, but I drew back as he was committing, and he had to come like 4 more steps, and there was a stream there where my shot had to be, and instead of like stepping down into the stream and coming up the other side, he opted to like hop over it and never gave me an opportunity to shoot. It was like so close, and then he just hopped and then was out of range again. I was like standing there at full draw. I'm like,
But if you
F?
think about it, though, like it makes sense
oh yeah,
for him to jump right there. Like they're not going to slowly tiptoe through something that they can just bound right over and
yeah.
they're
Because
done
I mean,
with it.
the stream's only 4 or 5 foot wide. Like it's a very small, almost like
Yeah.
a runoff.
Yeah.
But that was, I mean, since I watched that happen,
It's very easy to make that mental note. Don't
yeah.
put your shooting lane right there.
oh yeah, I'll never do that to myself again.
Yeah.
So I mean, I learned from it, but I mean, that was the first time that I was stuck at full draw, and I was like,
What do I do now?
yeah. I mean, that's just my inexperience.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure it'll happen to me again someday. But up
Oh,
until
yeah.
that point, if I drew back, I always shot.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was definitely a learning experience for me. And
No doubt.
I will never set up my shooting lane to be over a stream again. But it is what it is.
Indeed.
You live and you learn.
Yeah. That about wraps it up for me for stand locations. This is just getting me really excited for.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's still 3 months away. 4 months.
It's gonna scream up on us though. I mean,
Oh
it's.
yeah.
I know before we know it, we're gonna be. I mean, hanging cameras, and then
Yeah, me and Dad just put cameras out on Sunday.
we got logging coming in here soon, so we don't.
Oh,
Want
are they coming in soon?
Yeah,
Sweet.
yeah. I'll talk to you after.
Okay.
I'll fill you in. But we don't want to put cameras up until they're done.
Yeah, have them start felling trees right on the cameras.
So, throw a couple extra $100 out there to just
Yeah.
get crushed by logs and stuff. So we're gonna wait till after that. We usually already have our cameras up by now, but
Yeah,
just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do it.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we're gonna be trimming stands really soon. Usually in August.
Oh, that's just real quick. If you do have permanent stands, now's the time to check them. Make sure like ratchet straps are good. Loosen up the straps. Retighten
Usually we
them.
do that in August.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good thing you said there.
Yeah.
It's more than just a visual inspection. Loosen them and retighten them.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people take their stands down every year.
That's too much.
Yeah, we leave them up, and then we usually each buy a bag of ratchet straps, and anything that's even remotely close comes
rid of
down.
it.
You put new ones up, and then those straps can be used for tying gas cans down in the truck or something.
Yeah.
They're not junk. You just can use them for
I'd rather just not have my life hanging on them.
exactly.
Yeah, a new pack of ratchet straps isn't that much. It's not worth falling out of a stand over.
No.
Yeah.
No, most of the time, I mean, we just were like, yeah, let's just change it. I mean, I think they're like, for even like the really nice 4-pack or 6-pack's probably like $40. So
Yeah.
like it's not bad.
Yeah,
So
it's worth it.
don't cheap out on permanent
I
stead.
like to get a nice bright orange one
Yeah.
so you can see where your stands
Maybe with a
at.
reflective line through it or something.
Yeah.
I try to find the black ones personally.
Yeah.
Just because the camel ones, they upcharge you on.
Mm-hmm.
I tell
Gotta
you
pay
what,
for that pattern.
Speaking of, last year we accidentally bought those retractable ones.
Those things are
Those
sweet.
things are awesome. Now they're a little bit more, but for hanging stands, there's no flappy thing in the
Yeah,
wind.
you don't have a tag end to tie up. It's all compact.
They're the cat's meow.
I didn't
Use
even know
names.
those were a thing
Neither did
until
I.
you accidentally bought them.
I
I,
had
was like,
no idea it was
wow,
a thing.
this is nice.
Because I think we were like, "Where's the tail end on this?" And all of a sudden you start like pulling it out. And you're like, "Whoa!"
Whoa.
So, if you're a big spender, go for the retractables. I don't know if I'll do it again. Actually, they couldn't have been that much more because I didn't.
You didn't notice it.
Yeah, I didn't notice it. So, I think maybe
Yeah.
start leaning that way. Check your cables on your stands too. That's
Yeah.
another thing.
Yeah.
I can't believe that lock on. This I think it's the LEM or something. That one that's over off of Tenhaken.
The hemlock stand.
Yeah, I can't believe that stand is
That's-
still functional.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's the old plastic platform, and it's not even like a chain or a cable. It's 2 aluminum bars with a joint in the middle for the standoff, or like the part that goes from the
Yeah.
post to the platform.
Which one are you talking about?
The hemlock stand.
Oh, dude, that thing is sweet.
I know. I just can't believe it's still safe. Like,
Oh, that baby's grown right into the tree.
I
That ain't
know.
going nowhere.
No, but I'm just saying, like, it's the bottom is plastic, and it still is great. I think. Is there even a seat on that one, or is it?
Yeah,
Piece
it's,
of wood with some nails in it.
No,
keeps you-
no. It's pressure treated lumber with bolts. Keeps the squirrels from chewing on it, and it's about.
Is that another hot tip today, Tom? Use pressure treated lumber on your seats so the squirrels don't eat it.
Yeah. And
Porcupines will eat it though.
we don't have a lot of them around here though.
Yeah.
But make sure your seat's about. This one's probably about 8 by 4.
It's a good seat.
It's
Nice
got
and
it's got
comfortable.
room for about a half a butt cheek.
About a bike seat.
Yeah, it's one of those stands you want to put in a place where you got to be on high alert because you're not going to fall asleep in the stand.
That's one of those stands you almost have like an athletic stance in. Like you don't even have
Yeah.
like. It's like you're almost like crouched.
Getting
a
a
little
leg
bit.
workout while
And
you're
then
in
there's
there.
that knot that's right in your back, so you can't
lean.
even.
That's what I'm
lean
saying.
back.
Like you can't lean back, and you're like literally like hunched over, and I'm just like I feel like I'm ready to pounce out of the tree.
One time I might have been drinking the night before. Got up in the morning, hunted that stand about like 7:30. I mean, it had just got light, like maybe a half hour ago. And I'm climbing down.
I'm not sitting in this piece of
I
crap.
climbed right down to the bottom. I sat down on the bottom. I'm like, we're ground hunting with the bow today.
That's great.
Yeah, that stand is super uncomfortable. And I think that's one of the ones Tom and I did that fancy, like, climb up underneath.
Yeah,
No,
you-
there's no.
Or no, that's the one that
It's in a hemlock. There's no sticks or nothing.
there might be like a starter stick or
Yeah.
like one.
Yeah,
or
you
two
mostly
screw-ins.
climb branches though.
I forgot about that, but yeah, you're right. Now, for Tom and I like to put this climbing sticks right underneath the
Yeah,
stand.
you guys always used to piss me off doing that shit.
And put them like absurdly far apart because like who wants
Yeah,
to
well,
spend-
Tom will climb a stand. Tom's 8 inches taller than you and me, and
Yeah.
his stride's a lot longer. He'll climb up a tree, like, oh, that's perfect. And then I'm like ripping my pants trying to get my foot from
I think
rung
it's
to
funny
rung.
that like I'm pretty sure those screw-in steps are $279 a piece.
Yeah,
And it's
heaven
like-
forbid you use one extra.
I always like because every year I buy like a whole case of them, you know,
Mm-hmm. And you're still stingy with them.
oh yeah, I'm like no, like
Stretch out another 6 inches.
like here's where it would be comfortable, move it up a half a foot,
Yeah, exactly.
and then I'm worried about like pretty much have to do like a pull up to get to the next stick sometimes, but
And then you're like climbing down. You like reach. Like I feel like it should be
it
right
should-
there.
Yeah, it should be.
You look down, it's like 2 inches below your boot. Your
like
leg
you
is
almost
fully
have to-
extended.
I think what's scary is like you have to like almost fully commit to going down
Yeah.
to touch the step.
You're like falling onto that
You're
step.
like, okay, lined up, go. Again, this is fictional. All of our stands are super safe to get into.
Yeah, make sure yours are safer than that story depicts.
Yeah, perfect. Well, I guess on that note, make sure your tree stands are safe, and
Wear a harness.
yeah, that we all do.
Yes.
I won't. No bullshit. We all wear harnesses. But yeah, other than that, make sure you guys are just getting outside.